Yeah, I just wanted to do a kind of quick review of what we went over last week. Before we move on to the next, I got something interesting this week that I want to share with you. Like I said, you know, my motto comes from the Bible, Proverbs 4:7, and all I get understanding, right? Because you can't solve a problem until you first what?
Identify it?
Yeah, identify it, and you got to understand it, right? So, just like I said, I remember growing up, people, you know, remember the TVs, the older TVs, you know, you get frustrated with it. What would happen? You know, you start smacking it, banging it, and things like that, right?
Yeah.
You know, my pops kind of knew about the TV. This is when you had the tubes. So, he'd always pull out his kit, and he'd be relaxed because he's like, I know what the problem is, right? You know how to fix it, where other people are banging it, and a lot of times they end up, breaking their TV set. And that's kind of how a lot of people deal with situations. It's like, man, my wife won't act right, my girlfriend won't act right, I got to smack them, make them act right.
Yeah.
So people take that same mentality into their personal issues, right?
It's a good analogy. I like that.
Yeah, well, and that's what people do. And if you look at it, you know, that's just a lot of times how many people have been conditioned. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about the value systems. And it's important that, you know, we not only understand other people's value systems, but also we have to understand our value systems thoroughly, right? Thoroughly. That's why we have the bear module, right? Our beliefs dictate our emotions dictate our actions dictate our results. And that takes time, you know. And like I said, you know, what is one of the ways that, you know, we come to a point to where we're able to, you know, do an introspection on where we're at in life. You know, that's critical. I mean, even with when we're making goals and things like that, you got some people that just rush off to something and they don't really think, you know, somebody says, hey, that job pays some good money, that's a good career, you need to get into that. People get paid money doing that. That's your only people. Oh, okay, they just go ahead and do it. Then 5 years later or a year later, they found out, I hate this occupation, right? I spent all of this time getting this certification in this, I can't stand it. Now I feel like I'm locked into this because I don't have time to break away from it, because now I got, you know, a lease, apartment lease or mortgage, and I got a car payment, got a family, and that's when depression starts kicking in, right? Frustration. People aren't happy with their life, what they're doing. Why? Because they didn't really take time to try to plan out, what do I want to do with my life, you know? Remember, have that conversation with yourself. A lot of times we're so busy having conversations with the TV, with the radio, with just people in general, but we never take that time. That's why I always stress, you got to take time. Yes?
You know, I heard that, you know, the DVR,
Yeah.
where you can pause like TV, or you can just record,
Mm-hmm.
it has tremendously helped relationships.
Yeah.
Because people aren't just like, hold on.
Yeah, right.
Pause it. Yeah, okay, man, what do you need?
Exactly.
I'll record it and we can go to dinner.
Well, you know, that's a good analogy right there, because sometimes we got to put pause on life.
Right?
You know? So, I mean, that's true, because, you know, like I said, I go into the average high school classroom and you ask them, what do you want to do with your life? And they look at you like, why are you asking me that? I'm only 17. You know, it's like, yeah, I'm like, well, yeah, you are 17, 16. This is when you want to really start deciding, or at least exploring. Yeah, at least exploring. You know, I mean, you might not find it, but at least try to find out where your niche is, you know, where your skill set is. Yeah, and a lot of times they're just wondering what's going to be coming on MTV when they get home. Or that, you know, I
want tomorrow.
Yeah, I done saved that part on the video game, and, you know, I can't wait to move to the next level. Right? They're thinking about the next move they're going to do to get to that. And this is for real, you know, and so it's like all these, and those things take hours, man. You got people that spend hours, 1, 2 in the morning, listening to music, playing video games and things like that. And then, you know, these hours, and it just seems, oh yeah, you know, big deal. But you start adding up all those hours, right? It's like, man, you know, you took your time and put this into a skill set. I'm not saying you don't play video games, you don't do any of that stuff, but I'm just saying you got to be, we have to be a good steward over our time, right? And, you know, it's like that's something we have to police ourselves with. right? I tell my daughter, I said, well, what did you do today that you can look back and say, I moved one step closer to my goals? What did you do? Do an evaluation at the end of every day. How could I use my time better tomorrow, right? Because just don't lay up, and I'm not saying you can't watch TV or movies or anything like that, but have a balance, have a healthy balance to that, You're going to spend, you're going to watch some TV, an hour of TV, at least spend 2 hours reading or something, right? Have a good balance, and then watch what you read, because some people just read fictional fantasy books and things like that. That doesn't really count,
Right.
Do something that you're going to get some enrichment from, right? Self-development, right? Spiritual development from it. That's key. And that's kind of what this whole class is about, is just to teach us to take a pause in life, right? Because life is running so quick. I got to get a job, especially a lot of times, I know when I was a counselor, I released people on parole, and first thing they're thinking, they're just moving. I said, what do you want to do with your life? One of the questions I would ask when they were locked up, I would say, if I could take you out of here tomorrow for a whole day, just 24 hours, right? And you could work any job you wanted to work, any job. It had to be a legal, moral job, but you had to work for free. Free? I said, for free. What job would that be? And they would get to thinking, free? I said, well, if it's free, it's probably you're going to want to do something you love to do, right? Yeah. Well, some say, I'll do auto body, right? Others say, I'll work on computers. Other ones say, I would draw, do graphic arts or something like that. I said, well, then that is probably a good clue where your passion is, right? You're doing something you love to do, something you would do for free. See, some people just do something just for the money, right? And you got a lot of people that are making a lot of money, but there's a lot of unhappiness in their life. A lot of unhappiness. Then you find those people that live in a little rink-a-dink one-bedroom apartment in the hood, but they love, they love what they do. And they got so much peace and joy, and, kids might be cramped up, maybe in a two-bedroom apartment, but they love what they do. And guess what? It's a happy home, even in that cramped up place. Why? Because when dad is happy, mom's happy, right? Kids are happy. But you go out to the mansions up into these big hills, you got people that are stressed out, having to work 16 hours a day, right? Coming home, bringing home work, right? They don't like their job. You think that home, even no matter how big it is, how many luxuries in it, do you think that's a fun place to be? No, not at all. And see, we define success wrong. We look at, Jay-Z successful. I said, I don't believe anybody's successful that if you're living a life that is going against your God-given conscience, that's not successful. We define success with bank accounts or level of education and all that. That doesn't necessarily equate to success. My term.
Rich people that have died.
Thank you.
Who had a lot of money, but they were still unhappy.
There it is. There.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. And that's true. Because we have a success. Well, you got to live in this type of house, or have this type of car, right? Have this much money in the bank. Then you're successful. Who says that? I believe success is doing what God created you to do, right? I don't care where you live, what you're doing. If you're doing what you feel that God's called you to do with the gifts and talents He's given you, I define that as success. Would you agree on that? Because a lot of people think I got to make this much of money. Well, no girl's gonna look at me unless I remember this one individual, and he was from Watts, and he was a Grape Street Crip, and I remember he was just stirring up all types of problems and everything else, within our institution. And we were on the lockup unit within the lockup unit, and we had this guy, in a separate cage with another guy, on this modified unit, and he's like, "We're posting up. We refuse to come out," right? So they're putting on the mask and the t-shirts, and I just start cracking up every time I see that. I said, "Come on, man! And then, all of a sudden he took out a pen, right? And it was like a marker, and I'm like, what are you doing? And he starts just drawing. He's just trying to be defiant. He just stole the permanent marker from, the inside from set. And he starts drawing, right? But then he's drawing these really good looking grapes, right? And I'm like, this dude can really draw, right? And I know Lieutenant, everybody's coming, and they're gonna gas these guys out the caves, but I'm just looking at this guy's skill set. And I'm like, this is wrong. You're going to get in trouble for that. But I said, man, you are a really good artist. He's like, shut up. I'm like, no. I said, brother, I'm serious, man. I said, this is wrong, man. And I don't condone this, but you are a good artist. I'm looking at this. I'm like, man, you drew that quick. You drawing like these figures quick. And then I remember, they gas him out, and he gets sent, he gets in the shower. And I go to his door, and I said, bro, I am serious, man. You have a serious skill set. And he's like, man, shut up. I said, shut up. I said, no, I'm serious, man. The way you're drawing them grapes and the shading and all that, I said, that's a skill set. And I said, do you mind if you can, I said, I'm working on this project, for my, do my slides. I said, I'm looking for this kind of gang and drug prevention. Can you draw this gang member maybe in, I gave him a little scenario of him trying to change his life. He's looking at me. I said, look, man, I got some nutty butters for you, I'll give you a little incentive. Yeah, I'll do it. And he drew, man, this great piece of artwork. But then after that, I had him, staying busy doing all this other artwork. Then I started giving him pamphlets to, different art schools. Like one was the, I think the San Francisco Academy of Art and stuff like that. And I said, bro, I mean, you should really, you could add this stuff to your portfolio. And so he's getting all motivated, right? He's getting all motivated. Man, I could do this. And I remember one day, he's getting close to leave. And I'm explaining, and, at this point, he's really talking about maybe, trying to learn. I said, you know what? You need to transfer this skill set into computers, right? Learn Adobe Photoshop, learn Adobe Illustrator. You need to take this skill set, make it transferable into the digital age, right? They have those pens now. You can draw on a pad, and it shows up. It's like, yeah. But all of a sudden, he just gets mad, right? He said, man, forget this, man. I ain't going to be no L7. And I'm like, L7, square, right? And I'm like, I'm about to go to the streets, Johnson. I ain't going to lie. I'm about to go back out and sell my cookies, his drugs. And I'm like, where did this come from? He like, man, I ain't going to lie. I've been locked up for a long time, man. He's like, these fine girls in my neighborhood, they ain't going for no L7. I got to get that money out there. I got to get my car. I said, I'm just going to be honest with you. I got to get my car. I got to get some clothes. I ain't got time to waste. I wasted too much time in here. I got to get me, a nice woman. I got to get a nice ride. You see? Mm-hmm. But see, where his value system was, he was thinking in his belief system, I can't get a woman.
You don't have all the nice life.
But I'm like, well, why would you want a woman like that in the first place?
I want you because you got the money.
There you go. Yeah, why would you want a woman like that in the first place? I mean, that type of woman, she sees somebody got more money than you, she's just going to leave you and go with them.
Because once you lose all that,
there you go.
she's going to the next one.
Exactly. See, when I was growing up, we used to call them Madonnas, material girls. So you got you a Madonna. I said, nah, I'm messing with no Madonnas, right? So you want a woman that's gonna, a real good woman it's not gonna matter, right, where you came from. She's gonna look at where you are right now. She's gonna see the potential, even if you don't have a lot of money right now. She's gonna say, okay, I see potential in you. That's what type of woman you want. That's what a soulmate is, right? Mm-hmm. And that's a quality woman. It's like, it doesn't matter, but if you want a woman that's just gonna look at material, flashy things, right? And like a fish, she just sees the the bling bling and everything like that. Then like I said, that's what you're gonna get. That's what is gonna manifest in your relationship. Yeah. So you're always gonna feel pressured when somebody else comes by with something better than you, nicer car, more money. She's probably gonna jump ship.
It's a trip you brought this up. I've been thinking about this a little bit lately.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I wonder, I feel like it's like love and everything just kind of passed me by, so then I just turn to drugs. And then when I'm on drugs, I'm not going to find the girl that I want,
right.
So then I sabotage that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it's just like a few years ago, I was clean and sober and doing really well, and that didn't happen. So I mean, I didn't consciously say, oh, that's why I'm going to go back to drugs. But
right.
I kind of look back at it now and say, well, if I had probably got married and had kids, I probably wouldn't have started using again.
Right.
You know, so now I'm like back at the bottom again.
Well, I wouldn't say. I wouldn't say you're at the bottom. You know, it's just that. You know, I think, man, and this is the way I see it. This is my experience. If you're doing something you love to do, you attract what you are.
Right.
You attract what you are. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
My main question is like, sometimes I think I'll only stay clean if I fall in love and start a family and stuff. You know what I mean? I mean, what do you think about that? Some people have, say that's reservations and you don't love yourself enough and things like that. I don't know. I just wonder if you have any.
Well, I would say write down your goals. They say out of sight, out of mind. It's important. And I would always think, man, I would put out that ideal life. Like I would pray about it, and I would see, okay, what type of woman do I want, right? What do I want my life to look like? I want to do something I love to do. But I would always just work on, and I was always told, you attract what you are. So I would work on my God-given goal. And I kid you not, man, you attract the right, you're not even looking. And a lot of times that right person will come to you, right? And because they like that. Because a lot of times you got people that don't have any type of goals. And, people wonder, well, how'd you get, and you over here riding in the bucket, and this girl got a Mercedes, and she trying to talk to you. But it wasn't nothing like, and they're wondering, I was like, because a lot of times they're attracted to somebody that got confidence into the goal that they're going towards. You know what I'm saying? Even if you are broke, I mean, maybe living in a broke place, but, they just like the conversation. They like,
something different to them.
Yeah, something new. And they're like, and then some of my friends, they be scratching their head like, how you get this?
It's really weird. What you said was exactly what I was thinking. Like yesterday, it's like, I need somebody, it's like I can go get this good job and all that, but I need somebody to see the potential in me.
Well, you go out there, you start setting goals, and you have that vision. And then on top of that, what you do is you listen to her goals. And then you say, you give her vision and her own goals. And that right there, man, I'm telling you, you start saying, like I said, and that's what I would do. I was like, hey, what are your goals? I'm not just going to talk about myself. What are your goals? And I started brainstorming for her goals. Right. And we're just friends. And after a while, many times they're attracted to that. You see what I'm saying? Because I'm not just talking about my goals, because a lot of times girls don't want to just hear somebody just talk about themselves. They do want to hear about you, but they want to know that, okay, is he interested in my goals, and how can we work this together as a team? Can I take my talents and gifts, right, and work in tandem with his talents and gifts, right? And is this, they're looking for, like I said, you're looking for a woman. She wants to know, are you going to be supportive for that? And if you could present that vision, right, in front of her, even if it's not materialized, but they see that you're working towards it, they'll be attracted to that. The right woman will be attracted to that. Yeah. I guarantee you. Even if you got some quirks and stuff like that, they see you working on it. Okay, I see him going to church, and I see him, at the junior college, right? I see him have his plans written down, and then he's being unselfish, helping me with my stuff, and cares about my goals. Man, I'm telling you, that's a lot of times rare, right? Because now, for example, you look at the music industry, everybody's like, about me. It's all about me. You got to get with me. They got this conceitedness about everybody's conceited, and though they think they want that, they really don't want that.
They just worship the money.
Yeah.
It's always.
Well, just like these guys say, I want a ride or die chick. I'm just putting out there. I want a bad girl. Do you really want a bad girl? Because you get a bad girl, right? Now she's a bad girl. Right. She might have drugs on her. She's, cheating on you. She's everywhere, but she's a bad girl. But see, the music makes that look good. So you might get that girl, but you're getting something you really don't want. Well, they say be careful what you ask for, right? Same with the girls. They want the bad boy. Right. Then they get the bad boy.
And then they
now he's beating her up on the head, beating her all in the head and stuff like that. She liked that because he was rough and rowdy and stuff like that. But now that rough and rowdiness is turned on you, right? Now they're complaining about it, but this is what they wanted. This is what they said they wanted. And of course, they didn't want it to come on them. They like to see the guy beat up other people, not them, right? But now that he got tired of you beating on you, but then I know women that go out and get the same type of guy the next time. Get rid of him, then they get the same type of guy. And guys do the same thing. They get these girls that all night clubbing and stuff like that. I'm gonna go to the club. I said that's the worst place to meet somebody. That's the worst place.
Yeah.
I'm not marrying no woman that's clubbing.
Yeah.
I'm going out with my friend. I had a woman out there said, that ain't happening. I said, look, no, I'm not trying to control you. You're gonna do that. You can go with your program, but I'm not. That's not gonna be part of my program. That's not my part of my program. My woman ain't gonna be going out clubbing and drinking. It's not gonna happen. Now you can do what you want to do, but we're not gonna be running the same program, right? That's just that. Because I'm not gonna be out here wondering. I mean, think about it. If you go out to the club, what do you think they're just dancing for exercise?
No, they're out there drinking.
Yeah, they're drinking. That the alpha mindset, the transfers open up, right? So you come with the right line and all that. Now she's like, I'm sorry. No, I ain't got time for that type of drama.
It's opening doors for opportunity.
That's what's not going to happen, right? Yeah. So you got to be careful. And like I said, this is when, you're not only thinking about your value system, but you want to talk about what type of value system do I want my spouse to have, right? Or my friends to have. What type of value system, okay? Because, you got a good value system and you just look in all the value you have. I just want to have fun and a good body and just be nice. That's not enough. What type of values does she have? She might be off deep into some type of a cult, right? Where they practice all types of crazy stuff. And you be like, hey, what's this? You never asked, right? You didn't know what her value system was. Now you try to get married and, you got two different faiths. And now what's going on in the house? All types of turmoil, right? Chaos. So it's very critical. Not only we do the bear system, just looking at what we're dealing with mentally, but also who we interacting with. Where they at? People say don't judge. No, you got to make some. We judge all the time. I always hear that. You shouldn't judge, and I understand that's basically saying who's going to go to hell, who's not. Yeah, we shouldn't do that, judge, but we got to make judgments, right? What is judgment? Making an evaluation.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. I mean, if you trying to hire a babysitter and they come over from a newspaper ad and they got a blunt in their mouth and hat turned down backwards.
Right. Now there's an educated
killer tattoo on the front of the forehead.
There's an educated judgment and a non-educated.
judgment. You're making a judgment, right?
Right. But it's good to actually find out.
Yeah.
To do some investigative work.
Exactly. So you got to judge. And I'm not saying just speculate. Well, this probably been this. No, don't ask questions. Ask. Find out where this person's at. You shouldn't just judge by appearance. I understand that, but there's certain times though that you have to judge by appearance. If I'm looking at somebody that, I'm looking at a group of guys all flamed up or, blued out and and I look like they're looking bored and drinking and stuff. I might not walk on that side of the street, right? Because they probably looking for something, right? I might just stay on this side of the street and just keep strolling. I'm making a judgment call. Right? Especially if I got my son or my daughter or my wife or something like that.
Yeah.
I said, I don't want to have to deal with any type of confrontation, right? Yeah, I'm trying to avoid it all. I don't have to prove myself.
Right.
The Bible says, one of my value systems in the Bible says, a wise man sees danger and goes the other way. They say a fool is confident and goes right towards it. Now at the same time, if it's something you're trying to protect somebody's life or something like that. No, we're called to be bold. You see what I'm saying? But so we got to use wisdom because some people have that type of mentality, like they got to prove something to themselves, right? Well, I gotta, somebody, you're in the mall and somebody just stares you down and walks by, pump. You might be with your girl and then all of a sudden your heart starts pumping Kool-Aid and you're like, oh, you know what I'm saying? I gotta say something. You might be maybe at the state fair or something like that, right? You're sitting down and in the food court, and you might see somebody that you're one of your enemies that you had issues with, maybe in the past, but you're out of that, and they come by and say a few disrespectful words, and then all of a sudden, if you have your old value system, right, what do you got to do? Well, the boys if my homies was here, I have to rise up and say something and do something, right? Now, what's that going to end? Yeah, well, I'm not going to fight it, but I got to say something back. But what is that going to usually do? Now, they're going to feel pressure, right? Now, their buddies are looking at them. Now, there's probably going to be a physical altercation.
Or somebody getting killed.
There you go. And that's true. Like I said, if you're going to fight, it's safer to lose a fight now. You win a fight now. They want to get revenge. Yeah. So. Yeah. Thank you. Exactly. And see, again, my value system. Again, I go to Proverbs. A wise man overlooks an insult. A fool is annoyed at once. So I feel confident, right? I don't let other people define who I am. That's another one of my belief systems.
Right, because as far as an insult goes, if you don't believe it,
that's right.
You won't really be insulted.
Thank you. That's right.
If you don't think that there's some truth to it, then you're just going to say, you don't want to talk.
Well, we don't let other people define who we are. Right. Or you're a B, or you're this. Are you one? No. Like I said, if I got $10 in my pocket, and one of y'all say, man, you ain't got no $10 in your pocket. I'm going to show you. Why do I got to show you? I know I got $10 in my pocket.
Right. Exactly.
I'm insecure if I got to show you I got $10. I got to show you I got $10 in my pocket.
Right.
I got to show you nothing. I got $10. Right?
I know I got $10, and that's all.
It's not going to add any more value if I show you my $10. Right? That shows me that I'm insecure. So somebody could insult me. I'm all right. Now you put your hands on me. That's another story, right? Okay. I have the right to defend myself, or whatever have you. But I mean, somebody just coming at me, just speaking words. I'm gonna stay calm. Hey, what's the issue? Can we talk about this? Whoop, whoop, whoop. I'm gonna remain the professional one, right? I'm gonna keep my integrity.
See, you as a
person that you just
yeah. But I would act like said, you act like you're the instructor. I'm not trying to be sarcastic to the person or anything like that. I'm like, hey, hold on for a second. You keep low. What's going on? Is there a problem? I mean, what's happening?
What's the real issue?
Yeah. What's the real issue?
Now you were a CO in prison?
Yes.
Right. So you probably dealt with that.
Yeah. Well, I was a youth correctional accountant, which is like a CO. At the 18, 25-years-olds, we're CO. Yeah. So we're. Yeah, and Chad, yeah. So I was over at Chad, and you had a lot of that.
Especially that age.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because they're trying to prove themselves. They're trying to get out to the, get a record to go into. Yeah. I mean, a lot of them are going to prison, but then they're trying to get a rep.
Are most of them behind bars or in handcuffs when they're face to face, or are you?
No, I'm talking to them. No, because we're actually security. We're first line security in there.
Yeah.
So we get a certain amount of designated. We would get a certain amount of designated counseling hours, but no, we're first line security. So we have to have all the equipment and everything. When there's a fight or a riot, we're the first ones to respond.
Right.
So.
Was Chad is the one that they? I heard like a few years ago. Somebody told me that I think it was one of them. And somebody had 2 boys that got thrown in the cell.
Oh, that was Preston.
That was Preston?
Yeah, that was Preston.
Shut it down?
Well, not. Yeah, they shut Preston down. But Chad, that was actually.
They shut Preston down.
Yeah. Well, Chad was one. That was one of the most. We had actually had Arnold Schwarzenegger come there because there were so many assaults. It made the front page of the New York Times at that time. Yeah, it actually made front page of the New York Times because the school went way out of control because they were just bringing all the. So there was a lot of gang tension, a lot of stabbings and things like that. And then the governor actually literally came there in person and did a route. And then he started just taking some of these guys and sending some dudes to, Folsom and San Quentin. Said, no, we're not going to just tolerate all of this madness because we had numerous staff assaults and things like that.
Really?
But the thing is though, even in that, I had my techniques, Dealing with hostile, because we're doing hostile people all the time. We have a lot of stuff.
Right.
But, I'll use humor, but not a humor in a way in which I would, degrade them.
Right. But
I make a joke maybe about myself,
Right.
They're talking about my clothes. I'd make a funnier joke about my clothes than they made about my clothes or something like that. And then everybody started cracking up,
Right.
and then it would lower the tension. But I also show that, hey, I care what's going on. What is the problem? They be cussing. I'm like, okay, I understand that. Just tell me what the problem is to see what we can do about this. I said, if you keep cussing and stuff, I can't hear you. Just tell me. And then after a while, they'd calm down. And once they hear that you're listening to them, guess what? A lot of times they would apologize. Man, I'm sorry, man. I didn't mean to come at you like that, and all that. And that happened the majority of the time.
And you show that you care.
Yeah.
The CEOs don't care. They're going to get the most tension against them.
Yeah, they call them your bees and all that. I'm not even worried about that. I'm like, okay, I know this guy is probably just, I understand because he's probably just angry. Maybe he got extra time, or, he had a bad phone call where his girlfriend broke up with him or something like that. So he's displacing that onto me. I'm not going to take that personally.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? At the same time, I'm not going to disregard his feelings either, right? Because his feelings are real. So what's going on? I have to put myself in that situation, He probably feels like he wants to give up on life in certain areas. So let me find out what's happening with him. And that's it goes on in any type of relationship. What they say, somebody had a saying, they said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. See,
What happened? You retired already?
Huh?
You retired already?
Yeah, I left in 09 to go into full-time ministry. And that's just, what I do.
With a full retirement? Or?
Yeah, I get my retirement when I'm 50, which is just around the corner. So,
How many years you put in?
13.
Okay.
Yeah.
You ever been in some the real riots?
Oh yeah. Oh man, when I went my first day there, we had 2 riots. First day there, they had 2 riots with stabbings, and my 3rd month there, somebody got killed. And it was really rowdy. That was before they had the security cameras in there. So it was like every day. If there was a riot with no knives, everybody like, that's not even a riot, that was, that's no big deal. There's no stabbing,
Yeah.
But it was just off the chart. Then finally, when the Arnold Schwarzenegger got some funding, they got the security cameras. Because before they were just stabbing people, and all of a sudden you just slide it under the door, and then you're whoosh, they would flush it. And I'd be over there. Well, I seen this guy stabbing him in the head, and I remember I'd be in court a lot of time, and how many times did he stab him? I'm like, I don't know. I wasn't counting how many times he stabbed him. And then, we don't know,
Yeah.
But this guy was stabbed. Well, are you sure you didn't get this guy mixed up and all that? Well,
yeah.
So it's like, they didn't want me to know exactly how many times he stabbed him. You should see him do.
Yeah.
You hit him like 30 times.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know. I'm not sitting there counting, like 2, 3 of us out there, and you got 50 dudes out there, I'm not worried. We're worried about that, But like I said, that's part of, like I said, you got to understand other people's dynamics, right? Their belief systems, right? But it's important to have yours intact. I'm not gonna, and see, that's good self-talk. I would always say, I'm not gonna let other people define who I am. That's just simple. If you can put that in your bare process, next time somebody calls you a punk or this and that, I'm not gonna let others define who I am.
Yeah, it's basically giving them some
Yeah.
power over you.
Yeah.
You're letting their control.
Yeah.
They're like using you as a robot.
Yeah, because I remember, I grew up like that. Somebody says something, you gotta jump, and that's stupid. It's foolishness. It's just foolishness.
Yeah.
And then you look at where those guys end up. The guys I grew up with, they go into the prison and stuff like that. And early on, I started thinking, like, so you know what? If I keep having to do, I said, no. I said, you know what? I know I'm going to end up in prison, right? Because, like I said, think about it. How many times, especially in today's world, where we got this whole thug culture brewing, everybody's mean mugging everybody, right? Everybody. Looking crazy at somebody else, and you're gonna be fighting every week, right? If you have that type of belief system, or mean mugging, or this and that, and I'm gonna get them next time. I'm with my, and you're gonna be brewing up all types of unhealthy, toxic relationships with people in the community. I ain't got time for that. You know what I decided? I said I'm gonna treat, even when I was at the working at the prison system, I said I'm gonna treat everybody with respect, no matter what. If they cuss me out, I'm still going to be respectful. So they never have a reason to say I disrespected them. You see, and I feel better about that if I treat them with respect. Oh, you should just, no. I'm like I said, I'm going to treat them with respect. Now, I'm still going to hold consequences, but I'm going to be very respectful. Right?
Yeah.
And then, you know, and even in times, like I said, you have, I've had to restrain guys or something like that. You know, you got some people that, some of the guards would, you know, train, you know, kneel on the back, you know, just make a big scene about it. I'd never do that. You know, okay, you know, I talk, are you all right, you know? But then when I come out the next time, I don't have to worry about dudes like, man, I'm sorry, you know, I went off and whoop, and I'm cool. I don't have to worry about this guy coming back at me. I'm not trying to, you know, disrespect him or, you know, I just put that simple move, and I just talk to him real calm. Man, I don't want to see you. And I'll talk to him even down there. Man, I don't want to see you get in trouble, man. Stop resisting. You know, no, come on now. Don't say anything else. You know, we'll talk to you. And then they'd be like, okay. You just calm them down, right?
Yeah.
I said, man, no. I tell them, I don't want to see you keep getting in trouble, man. This is not, just stop it right now. Right. Don't make this anything worse. You know, this right here, we could probably get at this level. But you keep going and resisting, he's going to go to this level. And they start thinking, you know. Especially you talk calm. If I'm like, yeah, you know, like this, down, you know, yelling and screaming, a lot of times, now they're feeling disrespected, right? Because now the police disrespected them, right? Now they feel like now they got to do something if they don't want to do something because I disrespected them. You see? So, I mean, like you said, it goes back to that same belief system, treat others like you want to be treated, right? Even if somebody's acting disrespectful, you don't let other people's, you know, ignorance become your stupidity, right? Don't let other people's ignorance become your stupidity. So you just, like I said, somebody's talking crazy and all that. I'm not saying, you know, you can't be stern, but it's like, hey, that's not, I don't appreciate that, you know. But I'm not going to cuss somebody cussing. They like to say they never hear me cussing in there. Nobody's ever heard me cuss at Department of Corrections. I ain't saying that, but I'm like, I'm gonna use language professionally. You see what I'm saying? And all the time people be cussing and all that, and I'd have everybody laugh. I say that's not professional. I'd say just like that. I say, you know, that's not very professional. You know, the whole baby start cracking up, but it would diffuse the situation, right?
See what I mean? Isn't there like didn't all the COs like live there? Like,
no.
Like a little town.
Well, no. Chad kind of looked like a. I mean, it looks like a regular institution. I mean, it looked like an adult institution.
Isn't there a town where all the COs live?
No, that's probably Preston. That's probably Preston. That's probably Preston.
But now, what I was getting at was, did the other COs, like, were they corrupt at all, or were they?
You know what? And that's another thing. Yes, there was some, and I had to. And like I said, I was. Because you know why? Because I would tell on them. If I seen something, if they came down investigation, I'd be like, no, he did do that. But I would do that, and I would tell if I see somebody was acting corrupt. And I would say, look, don't do that. I said, don't do nothing around me. If I already knew the rep, I said, bruh, don't do that around me. I'm not cool like that, okay? Because you do that, I'm going to front you off. I'm going to let you know. And I had that one time where we had one counselor, and he was like trying to disrespect this one inmate. He read the guy's letter and, you know, in front of everybody and all that. And the guy was really, you know, felt disrespected by that. Yeah. You know? And the investigation came. Said, "Did you?" He said, "Yeah, he did read that letter." You know, but I would do that. I would tell him. I said, "Look, I told you up front. I'm not in the clique. I'm not under this blue cloth or whatever you call it." I said, you know, I'm a Christian. I said, I'm letting you know. You know, I'm not gonna lie for you. You know, I'm not gonna let you do this person and give him more time when I know. You know what I'm saying? And that didn't make me very popular among some staff. Yeah. And they couldn't say nothing though. It's like, what can you say though? It's like, what, you want me to go along with you with your dirt? Right. So they would just won't speak to me. Right. But then afterwards, you know, it'd be cool. They would respect that. Later on, maybe a year or 2 years later, they'd be mad because they might have gotten in trouble. But I was like, I already told you, bro, I don't play that. You know what I'm saying? That ain't cool like that. Yeah. But but also, the inmates respected that. Right? They respected that because they're like, okay,
they know I'm not gonna. Your what do they call it?
Fair, firm, consistent.
Consistent.
That's fair, firm, consistent.
Consistent. They know what to expect.
Now, if they do something wrong, I'm coming at you. But if one of my peers do you wrong, I'm gonna come after them, and I'll tell them that. I'll come after them. Well, what'd you do? You gonna get? And I said, no. I'm not going to do that. You know, I can't live with my conscience, and plus that's going to put me, not only that, but it's going to have a domino effect. Now you got the population, right, looking at you like, oh, you're a scandalous staff. You see? Now that's going to make my job more difficult and everything else, and it makes my relationship difficult with the Lord. And I don't have no peace in my life, right? So that's not happening. But that's just in anything, whether you work in that type of, you know, system or not. You know, you want to live by your values so you have peace,
Right.
right? And you got to make sure that you create a team around you that have like-minded values. Okay, you know the Bible says, you know, a fool hangs around an angry man. Why? Because that angry man is going to all of a sudden it's going to pull you. You keep hanging around a person like that, they're going to pull you into their mess, right? And I've had friends like that just angry, and then they get into it with can't be.
Yeah, something's gonna happen.
And anger, this person's toxic, right?
Yeah.
You gotta get your anger under control. He's gonna kick off
out there where you know they're just unstable.
Yeah.
It's like every time you hang out with them, something's gonna happen.
Yeah, stressful. I'm like, no, I don't need this. But then a lot of times people just keep hanging around people. They don't really understand the freedom that they have not to hang around the person. Right? I mean, just like in different relationships, you don't have to. You know, women complain about this guy keeps cheating on me. You don't have to be with him.
Right.
And a lot of times they don't get that.
You got a choice.
Yeah, you got to choose to be. But it's easier to choose before you get involved in situations. Look at the red flags, right? I don't just hang out with anybody, right? I want to know about that person, especially doing what I do, right? Because you don't know what people are involved in nowadays. Even my own relatives, I'm like, I don't know. You know, certain relatives, I'm like, yeah, I go see them here, and you need to talk to me. I don't feel comfortable going to their house if I know what they're involved in, right? Because I don't know. It could be a sting happen right when I go over there or something like that, and then I'm trying to explain and everything else, and they're like, oh, no, you was here. Now I'm over here trying to fight a case, and my kids are taking the CPS and stuff like, that's not going down.
Yeah.
So I'm always been the type of the person, I look at the big picture, right?
Right.
And some people say, man, you just paranoid. Nah, not that I'm paranoid, but I stay out of a lot of trouble doing that though too.
Right.
I'm looking at the whole chessboard.
Right.
See, some people just got laser focus.
Right.
And that's good when you're working towards goals, but at the same time, you gotta be able to learn to get that wide angle.
Yeah.
You know.
Now, most people, it takes a lot more for them to actually live like that. Like, remember Nick, who was a lifer? Now, this guy was a lifer. He did 22 years.
Yeah.
And he got out.
Yeah.
You know, and he's still a youngster like my age.
Yeah.
Basically,
Yeah.
he went in. He was in CYA.
Yeah.
Maybe no, he tried to run his adult. I forget, but he was at 16. But anyways, he did 22 years, and so now he's on like life parole. I think it is.
Wow.
I have 5 years. If they do good 5 years, they can get out.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. But he's on parole, so I mean, everybody that comes in, he won't even take a ride from somebody without knowing, you know.
See, that's wisdom, you know, because like I say,
being stupid.
Right. Anything, if somebody got
He
man.
gets into trouble for any little thing, he's going back to prison.
Yeah.
He won't ever have that eligibility to come back out.
Right.
you know,
yeah, like it's serious for him. Like somebody could just have some weed or something, man.
Oh, that's crazy.
You know, I remember one time I had a friend of mine, and not really a friend, just somebody I knew from the neighborhood, and he had got out of YA, right? I'm about 18 at the time. You know, I just started going to this church youth group, right? Kind of broke off from my other negative peers, you know. I'm about maybe 19. No, about 18. And so, you know, here I got the Christian rap music playing in my 8-track, and, you know, he says, hey, Ray.
And you 8-track?
Yeah. Not 8-track, or cassette. I did have 8-track.
Well, back in the 80s?
Yeah, this is back in the 80s. And he says, Ray, I need a ride to my girlfriend's house, right? Now, he just got out of YA. I did a couple years or so. So I said, all right, it's by the mall. I'm like, okay, that's cool. You can roll with me. So I said, time to maybe talk to him. Maybe I could talk to him going to this youth group, right?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to impress him with my Christian rap music, right? trying to be that good role model. I'm like,
Right.
hey, I don't really know much about the Bible, but I know I've got Christian rap,
Right.
And I'm like, you listen to the words, right? So he just kind of real still, just, I can tell something on his mind, right? And he just goes, and I'm talking to him, and he says, hey, just turn in here. It's these apartments over here. So I'm like, dude, I'm still talking, right? And he's sitting down, all of a sudden I hear a click, click, right? And he's and I'm talking, I'm like, wait a second. He's like this, right? And it's a gun. And I'm like, what you doing? He said, man, just keep the car rolling, man. I'm cool, man. I'll be right back. I'm like, oh! I said, we mean you be right back. No.
Yeah.
So he's getting mad. He gets out the car, right, with his gun. I immediately go around to the other side. I'm like, oh, bruh. I said, Mike, man, that ain't gonna happen.
You got out of the car?
I got out the car, man. I'm like, oh, heck no, because and he has a gun. He's getting mad with the gun. He's like, man, I'm about to off these. I guess his girlfriend was with the guy, right? Some dude that while he was locked up. So he's going to the apartment. He's like, I'm about to off them.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, no, that ain't gonna happen, right? and at the time, I just got some boldness, right? Because I'm like, oh, this thing, I don't know, that must have been the Lord, right? Because he has a gun, he's arguing with me, angry with a gun, like pointed at me. I'm like, no, and I'm blocking his way, like, So finally, I was like, man, I guess that's when I started using my counseling skill. I wasn't a counselor. I guess that's when I kind of knew I probably had some counseling skill. I said, bruh, just put the gun down. I'll come with you to talk with them, man. Just talk with them, right? And all of a sudden, he puts the gun under my seat and under the passenger seat. So I go up with him, and this girl comes out with a chain on the door, cussing him out. And then her boyfriend comes around, and this guy's going berserk. Oh, heck no! He wants to run back to the car and get the gun. And but you know what? I was thinking, though, if I wouldn't have heard that click,
Yeah, something would happen.
because he said, I'm going to be right back, and it was just a light little click, because I had the music blasting, right? Click. Man, I would have been an accessory, probably on a double homicide. Because this guy was going to kill. This guy's dead now. He got in a shootout with the police.
Oh, really?
Some years later, and was killed in a shootout with the police. So this guy would have probably done that. You see what I'm saying? And but I was just thinking, man, that was a great Samaritan. So that made me think again, like, I got to watch. Here I am. I'm thinking I'm cool because I'm doing a good deed for this guy, right? I'm thinking I'm ministering to him, but at the same time,
He's going to kill somebody.
he's about to go kill. He's about to kill. And I can imagine in the court system trying to, hey, no, I was just playing my Christian rap. No, you guys were accessories. And I know this dude don't have no integrity, so he would have probably sold me out and said, Ray pushed me out the car and made me do it.
They're going to take you to the driver.
Yeah, exactly. But see how that could have played out.
And I've been in situations